All right, today's episode, talking about boxes. Very simple subject, of course, simple concept, but also very, very important because the world we live in is made up of so many kinds of box-shaped, cube-shaped items. So many out there, and hopefully you'll start recognizing them more if you haven't started already. So check it out, I have a box in front of me right now. This is the smallest box I had laying around, so anyway, it's very simple. And to make this even more simple, if we close up the box, this is the shape that I'm talking about, a six-sided cube. This one happens to be a little bit longer than it is wide, so it's a rectangular cube. But it could be a square cube as well, or it could be a very long cube. There's not much to observe here, but it's still important to observe your subject, like simple things. The length is longer than the width. But depending on what angle you're viewing it from, that can change. So right now, we can definitely see this side is longer than this side, but if we view it from this, now it's hard to tell. This side, since the perspective, which once again, perspective plays into this, we can see that this is definitely shorter than this side, but the reality is that it's longer than it is wider. So definitely interesting to take note of that. And then what can complicate it is when you open up the flaps, then you have a little bit more shapes, different lines to really take note of, be aware of. But you know, we can talk about that when we start sketching here in a few minutes and maybe try to simplify that. It's definitely not that big of a deal, especially if you're looking from the top. You can see that it's just rectangles attached to another rectangle, so there's not a whole lot to worry about. But here's the interesting thing. This cube shape, like I said, is foundational to a lot of objects, and another one I have right here is a small portable hard drive that I have for my computer. And when we look at it, it's same shape. It's a cube, not a square cube, but a rectangular cube. It's a six-sided shape, basically. So there's a top, bottom, left, right, back, and front. And the interesting thing is that it has these rounded corners. So now you can apply the cylindrical stuff that we talked about in the previous episodes, like the bottles and the bowls and stuff, all these ellipses you've been making, and have a partial ellipse there, a partial curve, just some kind of curve around the corners, and you have a different object with different proportions. So it really comes down to recognizing these simple shapes within objects around you, tables, desks, a keyboard, everything around us, you know, this sign behind me, these sketchbooks, they're all this kind of shape. It's all a rectangular, cubical type of shape, but it's just at different proportions. So whether the height's different than the width, comparing the height to the width to the depth of it, because there's three different measurements to take note of. So you have the height, you have the depth, and then you have the length or the width, you know, length, width, depth, height, stuff like that. So there you go. I mean, there's not much more to say about it. It's really simple, straightforward. So let's get into the drawing of it. Maybe I'll just explain a little bit more as I'm drawing. It'll be easier to understand. But once again, it's always important to observe your subject either before or while you're drawing it, so that you can accurately put it down on the paper because you're accurately observing it. Let's get to the drawing. Obviously, we're going to skip like a side view and everything because it's just going to be a square. But to draw a cube at a perspective angle, you're just going to have these different lines. Depending on the proportion, they can be longer or shorter. But there's important things to take note of here that I'm going to mention. And this is definitely a quick cube. So this is a solid cube. And if I wanted it to be clear, I just draw the lines here, and now we can see through it. But one thing to take note of, what's interesting, is this line and this line are the same angle, as well as this line and this line. These are all going at the same angle. Same thing on the other side, on the opposite side, this angle, this angle, this angle, this angle, all going the same way, same direction. And then same with the sides. These are all just going up and down. So that's what builds a cube. So you have these different angles that are going the exact same direction. If we draw a cube real quick, and you can start out with just lines like this, and then like I said, keep these angles the same angle back here, same length as well, same length, and then same thing here, same angle, same length. And I'm guesstimating here, so maybe a little bit off, drawing quickly. But it's just to get the concepts, And like I was talking about earlier, to make it look more like a box, we can add an inside line there. And then you can just have rectangles coming off. Now obviously I'm using a pen, so I'm not gonna be able to erase anything like if I was using a pencil. So there's 2 flaps. If I were to do these other flaps, obviously, see, it's gonna look like it's see-through, like it's not solid, because I can't erase that line. But that's how to make a simple box. You know, changing the proportions on this cube, because that's what different objects are made out of, differing proportions. So if we just make the height a little bit smaller, but still keep the length long, now all of a sudden we have a different kind of box going on there, different kind of shape. This is obviously just another box, because I drew this line showing the inside of the box here. But if we were to draw like that portable hard drive that I was talking about earlier, it's very similar to this. Boom, start out like this, and there's that portable hard drive. The only thing you would really need to do if I was drawing this a lot larger, just round these corners off so that they're not pointy. So it'd be more rounded at the corners, and you'd have something like that. It looks like some kind of portable hard drive. So I hope that makes sense. I mean, this is very simple, very basic stuff, but I want you to be able to find these different proportions of different cubes and be able to see them in your environment and apply it to be able to create different objects. Another quick way to make a cube very easily, you know, we used to do this as a kid. You could draw a square, although that's more like a flat-on square. And then if you just draw another square kind of overlapping it, I mean, this is very basic. And then you just connect these points, you get a cube. So that's one very basic way to do it, you know, something like that. And then if you just drew it at different proportions, like I said, if you just do a rectangle and then overlap it with another rectangle, you can get these different proportions very quickly, very super quick. I mean, I'm not putting any effort into this drawing, obviously. You know, we can talk about shading a little bit, maybe with this box. It's very similar to the bowl from the other episodes I was talking about. So if we got a light from the side coming down on this, obviously there's gonna be a little shadow under here from this flap, something like that. But this side's gonna be light. You know, it's hitting, this is gonna be lit up, box is gonna be lit up on this side. This side's gonna be a little bit shaded because it's away from the light source. And that's pretty much it. Depends on which angle it's coming at. We can just say that it's coming straight like this. And you're gonna have a cast shadow. So that's something very simple. I mean, when you're seeing it at different angles, you're gonna have different things happening, different things going on. But that's just a very basic, you know, it might be darker on this edge here. The farther away from the light source, the darker it's gonna get. It'll be the darkest right around here. And you'll have a little bit of reflected light there. Basically, you wanna do this from life. Get like a portable hard drive or any kind of object that is a cubical shape, and try to break it down, draw it. You know, even this simple eraser I have here is a very small cube. Really looks just like this. So it's just different proportions. Like I said, different heights compared to different widths, compared to different depths is what's gonna give you all these different shapes. Like this table that I'm drawing on, it's a very long table. And if I viewed this table from the side, completely from the side, it's literally a rectangle with some cylindrical legs. Very simple. But viewing it at a 3-dimensional angle, you know, where can I draw this? You know, it's definitely more of it's a very long rectangular type of table like this. So it's just different proportions and you can get these different shapes. I hope that makes sense. You know, you can create all kinds of different things from life just knowing this basic foundation of a cube. You know, the other foundational shapes, we've already talked about one of them really, is like a cylinder. So you have cylindrical objects, you have cubical objects, and then you have spherical objects, which are more just like a sphere, three-dimensional. You know, here we go. We have a sphere here. Life is made up of all these things. You have cylindrical objects. Fingers are cylindrical objects. You could even say your fist is more of a cubical object, has these different sides and edges to it. It's more like a cube. Obviously, there's a little bit of difference going on. And that's something to play around with as well. You know, instead of making all the sides exactly the same, you can start playing around with this. Instead of making these parallel, which means instead of making them the same angle, you could change the angle a little bit. So let's talk about that a little bit. So if I made, let's say the top of it is going to be a square. So we'll have the same proportions there, but maybe the bottom is smaller, like a vase or something. So it comes down like this. I don't know, just making up a shape. But see, it's still a cubical type of object. It's still cube. It just has a smaller base than the top. You know, it's almost like an upside down lampshade. So, you know, if I can make it a lamp, oh, there's a lamp. Okay, woohoo. So, you know, there's all different kinds of cubical shapes out there in the world that don't exactly resemble a cube or a rectangle. They have these different proportions once again, and maybe the lines aren't exactly parallel as stated before. So that's something to take note of, be aware of, play around with, try to find in your reality things around you. Buildings, a lot of buildings are just completely rectangles. So, you know, we'll talk way more about this in the future. There's so many objects that this applies to. This was really a foundational type of stage or episode. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I mean, it's very basic. Don't try to complicate it too much, but we'll get into harder and harder, more complex subjects in the future. But for now, there's some cubes, some rectangles, and some three-dimensional shapes. Hope this helped you out just a little bit. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. See you on the next video. Peace.